welcome back to the second episode this week of the DP World Tour Picks and Bets. Skylar Hoke is here, joined once again by Tom Jacobs. Tom, how are you today?
Yeah, good. It's nice to do a second one, Sky. Like I know, we have busy schedules and doing one is definitely enough. But like sometimes when the opportunity presents itself, it's nice to do a second show. Some really nice feedback from people on the app formerly known as Twitter and the YouTube comments, right? So always appreciate those. They do get read, they do get seen, even if you don't necessarily respond straight away. So thank you for those that have sent messages in. And look, like this is a great week. What is it? I read that there's 6 players in total that can get that final European points list spot, which we'll go through as we talk through this. But yeah, look, there's probably 2 guys playing for a pick, and then there's other 6 guys that are playing for that final spot. So there's definitely a lot on the line, more so than normal at Crown-Cercier, and it's always been an awesome event. So I'm really excited for this DraftKings breakdown of the event.
Yeah. If you heard us yesterday, if you have not yet, we did a full betting preview of our cards, walking through that side of it like we do every single Monday. You can find that up on the Mayo Media Network YouTube. You can also find us available on any of the podcast platforms, Daily Fantasy Sports Picks and Bets, The Mix. Like Tom echoed there, just love the support, especially on a big week like this. It's awesome. We get a ton of eyeballs, and not sure how many opportunities we're going to get with this level of contest too. So like we mentioned, 100K to first place for the $25 flagship one. There's another 20K to first place in the 555. Those are the 2 flagships that DraftKings gets every single week for the PGA Tour, and we're now getting that on the DP World Tour side. And there's a chance to continue over to the Irish next week with the PGA Tour off still for another one. But let's just dive right in. I think it's a worthy discussion. I think yesterday, brought about guys that we are very interested in and think their odds might be different than what we anticipated or worth selecting. But the lingering thing that we do almost every single week is skip the guy at the top of the leaderboard. So Is Matthew Fitzpatrick a clear class above everyone else, like he is when it comes to the odds boards, right? Like that is a clear separation. But what is different this week is he's only $10,900. Right below him, $200 cheaper is Aberg, Maroc 10.4, Højgaard 10.1. It really seems that Fitzpatrick is not correctly priced when looking at it just from a straight odds board comparison.
Yeah, like it looks like you've got an opportunity to play Fitzpatrick if you want to, and I like that. I think it brings into a lot of builds. I think you're going to get a decently owned Matt Fitzpatrick here for good reason. 2 wins in a second. Look, if you'd have asked me about Matt Fitzpatrick before the BMW Championship, I'd have said he was broken. I'd have said to you that I was kind of concerned that he was going to be on the Ryder Cup team, despite the fact that he definitely deserves to be on there. I guess with Fitzpatrick, you just got to wonder how he's going to go and get it done. Is he going to be the guy that creates a ton of birdies, or is he going to be steady throughout each round and play his way through there? I mean, there's so many different ways to get to the scores that you require here. Is he going to be volatile and then make the eagles and birdies that you need? This is the first time, I guess, Sky, that he's played here since adding his distance, right? Like I don't remember him playing. He's not played for 2 years, so that would suggest that he didn't really have the distance. The last time he played here, he finished 69th, but I don't remember him being in a ton of form coming in. So, going for a three-peat is pretty tough anyway. So I think that there is an opportunity with Fitzpatrick that you've got a guy that knows the golf course, is in a spot where he doesn't need to do anything to get in the Ryder Cup team. Like he knows his pick is pretty much guaranteed, but I think he needs to do something to prove that he should play more. Like if he doesn't find form between now and Wentworth, I think I could see him being left out. And look, he finished second at the BMW and then 9th at the Tour Championship. That could be enough. But I think he'll look to take advantage of the course form that he's got.
Yeah, I agree. I just, all set aside, right? We have guys that are fighting for a Ryder Cup spot. It's never been in question. Fitz could totally, he could pass Fleetwood on the points side of things for the world points, but he's locked up. There's never been a question, right? If this is Fleetwood, and again, it's a different question, but at 10-9, absolute no-brainer. I just don't think there's enough separation. I mean, these guys are double the odds board, odds, and I think you're exactly right. He is going to be the first click for probably at least a third of the field this week. Now, a lot of us are flying without ownership projections this week too. So we can kind of talk about who we think are going to congregate around the ownership. And Fitzy seems like an obvious first click versus the speculative type of guys that are just below him, even though they are top class in this field.
So my evaluation of this. So let's just list them off, right? So Matt Fitzpatrick 10-9, Ludwig Aberg 10-7, Adrian Ronk 10-4, and Nikolai Højgaard 10-1. I think only Nikolai Højgaard presents enough of a discount to really like question whether it's the best pick at the top. Like I understand the Ludwig Aberg angle. I do get that he's, you know, potentially playing the best of everyone on a consistent basis. He's the most exciting. He's got a lot to play for. With that all in mind, like he's partnered with both Nicholas Colsaerts and Eduardo Molinari for the first 2 rounds. Like they are very much saying like play well and you will be on the Ryder Cup, because all the other guys are playing with each other. So he has got the ultimate. He must have been told like if you play well this week you're in. There must be something there, and I still just wonder that, plus the fact you're negating his biggest strength by taking away the absolute need to hit drivers. Now, again, we had this discussion yesterday, Sky, on the Better Channel. I won't go on too much into it again, but like just because you are long and hit the driver well doesn't mean you're not going to play well here. But the need to hit it, the need to hit it far is not there. Like the par 5s can be reached by most players. The par 4s that you can drive would generally be driven by most players. The others, people wouldn't attempt it. So if we say that, does that also apply to Moronk and Højgaard is the question, I guess.
It's hard because that was the one take that I kind of had to myself after thinking through the Ludwig versus Moronk discussion on the final spot.
Yeah.
And I mean, Moronk is a pretty world-class driver too.
Yeah.
Like Data Golf has both of those guys. I mean, Aberg already in the top 10, Moronk I believe just outside of it in the world from a driving perspective. So if you think through that, I mean, yeah, it would apply to both those guys. So, but I think I don't want to say, you know, to completely just jump into the 9Ks, but you made a very compelling case for Alexander Bjork. He's likely to be clicked by many, and it comes to a benefit at this type of course. And for those that didn't listen yesterday and just listened to the DFS preview, this course is a tighter at elevation, trees on there, elevated green, something that cannot be overpowered, I think is a safe way to say it, but distance doesn't necessarily rule out or become a benefit, but it is not what we saw last week on the DP World Tour, which was with bombs away, or potentially what you see every week on the PGA Tour, right? This is more of a classical test than the traditional test.
Yeah, I agree, and I think, like you say, I think it can be overpowered to an extent. Like I do think you can go 61-62 by just driving it perfectly. I just think it's very hard to do. Like I think you need to gain strokes off the tee, but you need to do it with a blend of both, and that's why I like for example, like Rosner last week. I thought he was the type of person that wasn't going to be absolutely bombs away, but long enough and straight enough to have that real unique blend, and I think that's what's going to work here this week.
Yeah, I can definitely see something similar to that overall. I can imagine there's nobody that I would be ruling out of those 4. If I'm playing a handful of lineups, which I intend to, there's nobody that I'm immediately crossing out in that category. For me, is there anybody that you would be?
No, I don't think. Maybe Moronk. Like I think he would be the one because I feel like ever since the pressure's really been cranked up to make this Ryder Cup team, he has faltered a little bit, and I don't know if it's just coincidental, whether he's put so much stock into it that he's kind of worried. I mean, look, what have we got? He had 3rd at the BMW International Open, 15th at the British Masters, where, to be honest, he played pretty poorly. That was a backdoor 15th. I remember being on him that week. Then he misses a cut as a Scottish. 23rd at the Open was obviously great, but a lot of it was just that strong final round. And then he just kind of blows away over the weekend last week. So that, coupled with the fact that he's never necessarily suggested he can tear his course apart, I think that he could potentially be the one to leave. I wonder with you, Sky, like, do you think you can play 2 of them?
I do. I always like that strategy to little stars and scrubs, and I bet it will not be near as common as it might be on a PGA Tour week.
Because sorry, you go. and then
I was just going to say just the unfamiliarity that a lot of people have with these guys in the 6Ks, right? There's multiple people on my betting card that are down there. I mean, Pedro, who we talked about yesterday, and we can get to, he's 6,300. Gondis is 6,200, right? I am okay taking on the risk, especially when I think, the disparity in talent sometimes from some of these guys isn't as wide as the margins may make it to be. So I am more than okay doing that. Yep.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Like, it's not like you're playing, I don't know, Bo Van Pelt versus Scotty Scheffler in the same, or with Scotty Scheffler in the same lineup, right? Like, I've just made one here while we were talking with the lowest guy in at 6-7. That allows me to pick Aberg, Fitzpatrick, and one of my picks in Eduardo Molinari from the betting show yesterday, and a former course winner, and then two guys in the mid sixes. You can get even more sort of, wild, like you said, and go with the kind of 6-3, 6-2 guys, and they're definitely out there. And that way you can get a kind of another third guy in that makes you feel comfortable, right? I think it's just one of those things where I do think we've seen the Soderbergs and we've seen the Tristan Lawrence's win in recent years to suggest that someone of that kind of ilk can win, and they're going to be available in the low sevens. So, yeah, I do think there's a strategy where, and if there was two, I think it would probably be Fitz and Aberg for me, because I think one, Aberg's got all the pressure on him and is trending obviously towards a Vim very obviously. And I think Fitz just wants to find that win, and has got a course for him.
Yep. I can totally align with you there. We brought up the discussion of Alexander Bjork at 9.9K, which I think will be very, very popular this week, and rightly so. But where I want to jump to in the 9Ks, right? So I guess we have 8 golfers there: Bjork, Bob McIntyre, Matt Wallace, Rosner, Jordan Smith, Rasmus Højgaard, Yannick Paul, Adrian Dumont de Chessart. I think I would argue that Dumont de Chessart, to me, might be the most mispriced player in the field overall. And that might be second to what we just discussed about Fitzpatrick being, maybe not as high as he should be, but I just think it's overreaction by one miscut last week of what we've seen. Not that there aren't incredibly talented golfers right in this range, Ryder Cuppers that are in here, but man, I think Dumont de Chessart is just as good as almost every one of these guys in this range. And why he's on my betting card this week, why he fits a course like this, because his irons and his scrambling and his putting is the best parts versus the driving side of it. So I'm okay him being, a really overexposed guy in my lineups this week overall. And I think we're going to, I don't know. It's going to be interesting what drives ownership this week, because if you just look across betting cards, the guys like Bjork, guys like Matt Wallace, Antoine Rosner are all a little bit more frequented on a betting card this week. But I think from a DraftKings salary standpoint, they just might be priced up a little bit higher, or just not as much of a value as getting up to guys in the 10Ks.
And look, I just think you said obviously that you think Dumont de Chessart is the most mispriced. I think it's probably Matt Wallace.
Okay.
Like, I think we're talking about overreactions to a miscut. I think there's an overreaction to a second last week. And I get that he was second here last year, but that was an outlier as well. Like, he's 70th, 51st miscut in his first 3 starts. He then finished second, and his performance last week was an outlier of his current form, which is 65th miscut, 48th miscut, 78th, 42nd miscut, 43rd, 45th. Like, there's this overriding feeling with someone like Matt Wallace that every time they come back to the DP World Tour, they're going to perform. And I don't know that we necessarily have that, to kind of pin our flag to. So as much as I do absolutely understand that he could go well, and look, when you look at it, he's gone 43rd, 45th, second. Like, it's not like he's been missing cuts every week. But, we saw him in the Corrales. He finished 28th for the Valera, and then all of a sudden he rattles off 3 missed cuts. He is a very volatile golfer. He finished second in this event last year, coming off a missed cut at the Wyndham, and then missed 2 cuts at Maidenhead and Wentworth, where he would have been popular for both, because he would have had good finishes at both, including, I think, a win at Maidenhead. So I think he's the one for me. I'd be way more interested in terms of a bet than I would be in DraftKings, and I'm not interested in the bet. So that should tell you what I think about him in DraftKings.
Hey, I couldn't agree more. I thought you were going to go the other way there, talking into him, and I absolutely agree, because in my opinion, I guess, not even dipping into the 8s, but I think it's hard pressed to not think Justin Suh had a better PGA Tour year than he did.
He did, yeah, absolutely. Even though he
Right.
won, right? Like he won a small field event that didn't even get him to the playoffs. He won the Corrales. I think his performance at the Valspar was way more impressive probably than his win. Maybe that's biased because I didn't see much of his win. Like it was the Corrales. But after that, he just did nothing. And that is kind of Matt Wallace in a nutshell. And I think when you think back to like he won 3 times in a season, didn't get on a Ryder Cup team, I think that's probably what the team were thinking. Like this doesn't necessarily indicate as much as you think it does. And he's just not that player that has been able to ever rattle off anything. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's mental. I don't know if is he slightly limited as a golfer? Like I don't know. What do we pin our hopes to with Matt Wallace? Do we expect him to be this elite driver of the golf ball? Is he great short game? Like I never look at Matt Wallace and go, his irons are flashing. Let's bet him. Because
yeah,
I mean, he like even with his 8th last week in straight game approach, he's the 71st best golfer in terms of approach over the last 15 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's against tougher competition. I understand that, but this is all kind of relative to the field. So I think I would definitely be way more interested in, pivoting to whoever's a low ownership in this range. I think you're right. I don't think there's much of a difference between any of these players. McIntyre's got so much to play for. Yannick Paul has got the motivation to get into the team. I'd probably much rather go to Paul and DeMonte Chassart than I would Wallace and McIntyre.
Yeah, I think to me, Yannick makes a lot of sense in this type of format here. I mean, he's had a relatively, his last miscut on the DP World Tour is back in February, right? A lot of safety, multiple top 10s in his last 5 starts, and probably overlooked relative to the other guys.
He's just not as flashy. Like he's not the type of person that turns up at the Open like Robert McIntyre does, so people don't really think of him. And I get that. Like, and this is where you can have an edge. Like, and I'm not saying if you listen to the show you're gonna have an edge, but like where we talk about these guys that people are unfamiliar with, this is where you can win because people are going to typically go right. Well, I know who Robert McIntyre is. I've heard about Alexander Bjork because he played well at the Scottish Open for a period of time. He's been playing well all season. I've kind of heard the name Anton Rosner. Jordan Smith's played in a few majors. The Højgaard twins are well known. And then you've got these kind of, other guys that we're talking about here with, I don't know, Lane Gask or whoever, like as we go on further down. So there's definitely an edge on name value only. And Yannick Paul, I think, is one of those.
Yep, I agree. And that's where I'm a little stuck on. Like Jordan Smith, I guess to me overall, I don't think there is much separation in a lot of these guys right here. And it's why they're priced so tightly. And I would probably lean into expected ownership or projected ownership if you're making your own. The only caveat with Jordan Smith is there carryover because he was popular the last time we had a discussion about him at the Open Championship, right? He made the cut, he hit the ball well, hasn't, really done much poorly in the last 2 months in June and July, hasn't played since the Open Championship. I don't know, like, is there any interest in Smith this week? Like, I like him more than Rasmus. To me, even though Rasmus is a winner here.
Yeah, I think I like him more than Rasmus just because I think people will look at Rasmus has won at the golf course. He's won recently a Maiden Himmerland, and he's a name that people know. I think just purely on ownership, I think that Smith wins there. I think he'll be lower owned. And we don't know how Smith is going to react to that run. To your point, he hasn't played since the Open Championship. And what did he rattle off? Like 6 straight made cuts. He was 6th at the European Open where he was the 54-hole leader. Probably should have done better. 20th at the US Open with the final round 66. Like we talk about these people that have kind of been playing well and then had breaks, and they do tend to come out and play really well. So I think Smith has it's tough because I would say Smith has a higher floor, but he's missed 2 cuts at this golf course, and I don't know necessarily whether that's a course fit thing or just because he is a good driver of the golf ball, and that's how he gets around, right? But he can also get red hot with his approaches. I'm just going to look at kind of his form coming into that event both times to see if there's anything in there. But I think Smith is a safer DP World Tour player than most.
Yeah. I'm just trying to not gloss over Rosner either, right? Somebody you've been super keen on.
Yeah.
I mean, he hasn't missed a cut in since March, right? Yeah, March. Steady Open Championship, really, really strong. Czech Masters, good here. Like a lot of boxes checked for Raz. I guess Matt Wallace is the first one that I come to that, and Rasmus for me overall, that I'm like, I don't see myself landing there really, even in abundance of lineups, making some stands on that end.
Yeah, so just to quickly circle back, and I agree with everything you just said, by the way. I love Rosner a lot, and it's going to be down to ownership as to whether to play him or not. But going back to the Smith conversation, coming into this event, he was in poor form. He was absolutely terrible. Missed the cut of the Irish Open, Scottish Open, Scandinavian Invitation, all three events coming into the week. He was still hitting his irons well, hit his irons well this week, and missed the cut because his putter was terrible. He was losing 2 strokes per round with his putter. And the time before that, he'd won the Porsche European Open, finished 9th at the PGA Championship. Then, came into this after a 60th at the Czech Masters. So I would argue there that he was probably, just far more volatile at that point. It was his first win. He played well in the major. It was pretty tough. So I actually think, looking more into this, Jordan Smith is a really good pick with Rosner. And I think there's probably an avenue where instead of taking 2 of the very top guys, you could go Bjork, Rosner, and Smith and figure something else out on the way.
And Dumonte Chasart, right? I think you can make a good balanced lineup this way too. Yeah. And I don't know. I'm hard pressed to think people would begin their lineups with Bjork this week. I could see, Bjork. I'd be hard pressed to see somebody start a lineup with Rosner or Smith, and you could go Rosner, Smith, Dumonte Chasart easily.
Yeah, that leaves you mid 7s, which we're going to live in, I think, as we go along this conversation.
Yeah, I think the 8Ks here is when questions begin to really be asked about a good amount of guys. And I guess it's hard, I think, overall. Like if you're grading out players, if you're looking at value-based type of things, like where I think there's just going to be so much fear in the 6Ks, the more that I think through this week. I think it's just going to be genuine fear or numbers that people are overwhelmed by trying to click down there. So
understandably as well, it completely makes sense. And look, I think even though we know these DPL Tour players really well and better than some, we would, or I would probably, as a building up a lineup, would try and avoid it because I just think it's so hard to pin yourself. But you find so often you're so high on these kind of 8K guys like a Victor Perez and Ollison or whatever, and Lane Gask, and it just doesn't work. So I think for me, you've got 2 approaches here. You either go with the talent that in Justin Suhr and Victor Perez, who I think are the 2 most talented in this range. I think it's pretty fair. I'd always argue Ollison because I tend to, but or do you go with the Fitzpatrick, who I think is just so obviously the most informed player and the one that can really, you can go, yeah, I can see his path to victory, which I can. Or you try and get a little bit weird and go, right, well, Lane Gask has consistently been a good golfer on the DP World Tour. He's got a 7th place finish here. Nicholas Norgard-Moller is not going to be necessarily popular as he was last week because his driving is negated, but he's also got a 61 at his golf course. So I think there's opportunities in this 8K range, but also not a direct need to go there and take the risk.
What happened last week to Lane Gask, or 2 weeks ago? That was probably his worst performance of the year. Yeah. Which was, tough in that type of event. But I think Fitzpatrick remains. For me, I am so keen on him. He was one of the first clicks that really caught my eye overall. And I don't want to ignore, and hopefully, even though he's trendy in our neck of the woods, you're putting him next to what was one of the best college players 5 years ago, right? Justin Suh coming out with that class. Pretty recognizable name. I made the comparison to Matt Wallace to Suh, but even so, I don't like it really for him either this week. There's nothing that I'm feeling. If I liked it, I would have bet him because his numbers are fine too from the outline perspectives.
Yeah,
right?
I think there's one of these things with Justin Suh. The only nagging thing in the back of my head because there is, like you said, there's nothing that I can point to where I go, this is why you should bet Justin Sir this week, other than we always see these PGA Tour players come over that play consistently well on the PGA Tour, then just drop down a grade, and that is what it is, and contend.
Yeah.
And there's no reason to think that he's the one that can't. I think rather than taking that risk at 8-8, though, I'd rather take the risk of the anti-course fit, I think, in Norgard Moller, who was going to be popular last week because he's this electric driver of the golf ball. He's been in good form. It plays to his strengths. But he comes back here a year after finishing 29th at the golf course. And he shot a 61 in round 2 and a 66 on Sunday. So, it's all ifs, buts, and maybes. But if he doesn't open with a 75, what happens now? If he doesn't open with 75, he probably doesn't shoot at 61. It's all a domino effect. But it just shows that if he's confident, if he's in form, what Moller can do to the course. So I think for me, the two picks I like in this range are Fitzpatrick and Moller.
Yeah, I'm still going to stick strongly on Nathan Kimsey, who we talked in depth yesterday. Comes over, playoff loss in the Barbasol, solid form overall, leading to a course that should play to his strengths. I think Moller is interesting to that degree. I didn't see myself. I think Lane Goss would be the one that I would just write off the ISPS Honda. Been very, very good from a ball striking standpoint. I don't know, Thor. I would just so much rather. I mean, a lot of these guys, I would rather play Dumont de Chassart over just to get to, right?
And with Ollison,
Yannick.
Yeah, with Ollison, I'm like his biggest advocate. Like I've always been a big defender of Ollison, who's kind of gone missing for off the course issues, right? But I for some reason I can't find anything about him this week. And look, it was the same kind of last week. I didn't really like him, and he finished 11th, but he's not one of those guys that people are going to go, look, it's Thorben Ollison, I know who that is, let's click him. He's in the 8K range, just below Yannick Paul and De Chassart, who I don't want to pick. Like that's where I think the mentality goes. I don't like Lowson, I don't like Ategi. So I would pretty comfortable ruling them out. I guess Lowson is.
Yeah, I don't mind used. He's just been so good with approach.
Yeah, like I guess Lowson would be the one because he probably does offer that floor. Though. Like he's made his last 6 cuts at the course and he's playing really well. But yeah, I don't think he wins. So it depends what you're playing Joost Lowson for. Like you playing him as a solid guy to get you a top 15. I'd probably rather go with the upside of someone I think can fire that low round. I think your Nathan Kimsey thing. Like if you think he can genuinely win, why are you paying $500 more for Joost Lowson?
Yeah, I think that's very fair. Kinholt and Ferguson, the other two we haven't really mentioned in there.
I just can't get a read on Kinholt.
I don't mind him, man. I mean, 12th last week, 20th, 14th at the 2 PGA Tour events.
Great form. Like it's impossible to argue that he's in really solid form, and he's never missed a cut here. Like he's 5 for 5. What is the upside of a Marcus Kinholt? Like we always consider him to be this guy that can break through and win, and I know that he did well on some mini tour stuff coming back from his kind of injuries, and I think he had epilepsy and things like that. Like he's had some horrific challenges in his life already as a professional golfer. I think he's solid without being spectacular this week.
And that might be enough at 8,100. I mean, RB's got his upside. Bear off at winning this week. So, right. I think he's somebody I would trust a little bit more potentially than Ferguson for me.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Okay, so 7Ks. Now there's a load of golfers in the 7Ks overall here. So we're not going to read through every single one of them. As we start, I guess if we segregate it out a little bit into the top section versus the low section, betting card guys that, again, we'd really encourage you to listen because a lot of it carries over from yesterday into today, and we won't go as in-depth into every single player. But Histatune, 7,700, Eduardo Molinari, 7,600, I think just carry over exactly what we discussed yesterday. Of course, fits of trending form of guys. Molinari's putting's coming around. Histatune is a very good short game player. I think they fit the bill really well this week. If we look at other golfers, I guess above 7,500, Guido, of course, will be finding himself in, a good chunk of lineups on my end as I like his chances again this week. For those that we haven't bet, so that's a Padre Harrington, a Campillo, Heli Kilda, anybody or else, I guess, 7,600 or above that you would be clicking?
I like Marcel Seam.
Okay.
I think he's a guy that I think he's Joost Luiten at $700 cheaper. So
Yep.
I think that's the
You
same guy.
made that point at the Open Championship. You literally made that exact parallel. And what did he do? He played well at the Open for a good chunk of that time period.
And you look at his last two course efforts, and this kind of tallies up with the kind of return to form in recent years. 7th and 16th at this golf course. He's got 12th and 14th in the past. He's probably going back even beyond the 15 years that I've got in front of me. So Marcel Seam, I think, offers a little bit of safety at 7,800. And I also think, I mentioned Henny Duplessis on the betting show yesterday without betting him. I think he would be the other guy. Like he shows that he can play well in South Africa. There seems to be a decent crossover of South Africans and people that perform well at Crans. He was 16th in his debut last year, 66 and 64. Good around the green. I think Henny Duplessis, I think he had a little interruption where he kind of went to live and didn't stick it out. Like, I think now he's kind of dedicating himself back to the tour. He's playing pretty well.
Yeah, kind of a trendy sleeper or long shot this week overall, with especially his driving being so well. I was looking into Campillo. He was on our friend Craig Thompson's podcast a few weeks back, kind of preview and had a discussion a little bit about Crans, as he's had a renaissance the last couple of years here and turning around his attitude and play at this event. We've seen some good finishes from him then, and I still can't be clicking it versus the other guys that are around here. I think Seam would be my guy. I don't mind Southgate either, though. He's coming similar to the discussion of what we had of like Jordan Smith coming off of form, leading in, very popular at the Open Championship, played well above the expectations that I had for him that week. 10th place at the ISPS Honda. Feels a little under discussed this week. Maybe just people just know not to bet him overall and to play him. So I'm curious if he gets clicked a lot this week.
Yeah, I think with Southgate, I think it's one of those ones. He's another one that people just think, oh, he's a links player, and if he's not playing links, I'm not going to bother, right? And that's not rung true for a decent period of time. Like, he definitely does up his game around links, so that's not a question, but he is capable of playing well. He's done it twice here, 23rd and 30th, 65 and 66 bookend rounds last year. Really solid in his second start. I just never know what Southgate is. Like, I don't know. We know the upside isn't a win because he doesn't do it. But I would probably take the chance on him over Campillo, because I think people will pin their hopes to Campillo a little bit. I don't really get why Padraig Harrington is where he is. Like, he's not playing the way he was playing. But look, I think between kind of Migliozzi, Molinari, Hitsatoon, Seam, like, I think we pretty much got his range covered.
Yep, I would agree. Low 7Ks as we dive in here. I'm just going to ask you the question: Danny Willett or not Danny Willett?
Well, I'm normally a Danny Willett in that situation.
That's why I'm asking you. Yes.
And this is one of his courses. There's nothing.
He's like terrible right now.
That's the thing. Like, there is nothing that points to it. Like, I will never forget the Dunhill links. Like, he's always kind of given me that thing, right? And I don't know what it was. I mean, he wasn't great before then either, was he? So it was one of those ones where I think I said that he was kind of just missing cuts, and it was worth taking him in an event that he likes. Similar, I guess. Like, he opened with a 70 at the Wyndham. It wasn't exactly drastically bad. He made the cut at the Open. He was pretty bad at the Scottish Open. I don't know. Like, it's a good bullet. I think I'd probably rather go Pepperell.
I would too. Pepperell stands out. I mean, closed really, really well last week. Should fit this style much more than the previous. Hasn't had that much success here, but coming off of 2 good weeks. And that's I guess the question really becomes, and I encourage people, in addition to listening to this when they're evaluating it, right? We're evaluating potentially short-term form on a lower tier tour in a not premier class field. I mean, it's strong for what we get here, but not, one of the best ones that we'll have. is maybe don't get oversighted into a few blips on the radar. Somebody like Willett, who might, even though it's as bad as it is, long-term grade out, better than some of these guys just because what we have. But it's hard not to get sucked into what we saw out of Eddie the past 2 weeks. It's hard not to think about Shubanka Sharma at 7,200 after the last time we saw him was incredibly impressive at the Open Championship, where he really was just field average with a driver. He did everything else exceptional. Irons were unbelievable, but he hasn't had much else. I guess he's just like a random, top 10 guy, top 20 guy that pops, and a lot of miscuts in between. But I know he's somebody that will probably get a few more clicks just because if you box score him, you're going to like what you see.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree with all of that. Sharma, just a guy that I think you trust to win at this level is one thing you definitely say. So if you think you like him, I get it. I wonder, this is going to be an interesting one, a bit of a discussion. Daniel Hillier has won the Swiss Challenge on the Challenge Tour. And the British Masters was tree line, right? So as much as we kind of see him as this potentially, linksy type player that likes wide open courses, I think he's got it in his locker to play well at this. Euro Bank Open was Austria, right? So that's pretty close by. He's played well in the South African events, which always seems to kind of flag things. So I think, considering how high I was on him at the Scottish Open, the Open Championship, I think I've got to go back to him. Like, he might even be
was the one I wanted to discuss.
Yeah.
Yes, I wanted to discuss because we did not talk to him yesterday. I think Hillier, if this was the week after the Open Championship, people would be forgiving of a miscut at a major championship, right? Or like he was still really good at the Scottish from a ball striking standpoint, right? He just could not chip or putt. And we were talking about 3 top 5s with a win in 4 events, right? Everyone was all over him, and then all of a sudden he hasn't played in a month, missed a cut at a major, and he's $7,300. Absolutely, I think he's well worth the clicks this week. I bet Dan Bradbury last week. I think Bradbury did nothing but just stay solid, continues to be a really good off the tee player. Sunday wasn't as good as the previous couple of days, but he's somebody that I do have a lot of just consistent faith in, and he's getting pretty cheap here. Zanotti, arguably, maybe he's just probably the best of the bunch around the area when you zoom out on form. He's got a 4 last week too.
That guy that you like, he's finally showed his ball. Like last year, it was like Zanotti's great with his ball striking. He can't putt. He's not going to win, but play him. And now he's finally, I think, back to that. So I think that is the same approach. I think Zanotti will play well. I don't think he's going to win. So at this point, he's a good price. Just going slightly back to that Daniel Hillier thing, like Craig Lee's got a runner-up at that Swiss Challenge and here. I don't know if that's just one person is enough to kind of get too excited about it, but it's enough reason to maybe go for it, I think. Just trying to see if there's any more crossover here. Ricardo Santos has been playing well, and he's won the Swiss Challenge, but it's been putting driven. Marcel Schneider and Helle Kilder are both people that have won the Swiss Challenge as well. I don't think there's
7,400 and not bad either.
I don't think there's necessarily too much to look at in that course. I mean, they're different courses for a start. It says it's a Swiss Challenge, but it's basically France. So there's not something to get too caught up on, but I think just overall, it's a reason for me to look at Hillier and just think, actually, look, he's that volatile person I think can win at 7,300. And I don't think there's many of them. I guess they've got the one guy he's next to is Soderberg, who could.
Yep, who could and has at this event, right? $7,300 there. Gavin Green's found a lot of weekends at $7,400. Valimaki's at $75 after a great week last week. I skipped over Richard Manzo at $7,600, not because I want to play him, but he did just get married on Saturday, and both Ferguson and Seam were there at the wedding. So
he's in. Like, put him in. And is Pablo getting too low here at this point?
Man, is it just like blindly click Pablo, right? Like that's probably.
I think he's always, the argument is he's a better bet than he is a DraftKings play because he's so volatile, but that's not necessarily a bad tactic in this range where he needs to get a little bit different.
No, I mean this is as top heavy of a week as we're going to get on the DP World Tour ever. You're going to need a 6-6 that has upside in it, so I don't think you play for safety overall. It's why I feel aggressive on 6K guys, and I I think Pablo fits that bill. If you want to get turbo aggressive with somebody who can win an event.
What about Sadia? He's 7,100. He before missing the cut at the Barracuda, he finished 22nd at the European Open, where he's 12th going into the final round. 31st at the BMW International Open, where he was 4th going into the weekend. He was 28th at the British Masters, where he was 3rd after round 1, 11th after round 3. 35th at Himmerland with a 68-66 weekend, and 3rd at the Barbasol on the PGA Tour. Then misses the cut last week on a course I don't necessarily think potentially suits him, and he's got a 7th place finish and a 25th place finish here. All of a sudden, I'm kind of finding guys that, like I was looking at Cockerell originally and people like that in this range. Carol Moore, like I think going to be popular at 7-1, but I think he might be the guy, Sadia.
Yeah, I can see Sadia being a good click, like I think a smart click. I always love Scaper's talent. We can't talk through everybody. I would have a discussion about Nick Backham, just due to what we saw last week at a time that, I mean, we discussed him, and I'm kicking myself for not getting an each way payout on that or a top 10 with how long of odds he was, right? But does what he has as a skill in his bag show up now to this week? Because like he did have a stretch run of form, right? Like we saw that win coming.
Yeah.
Is this the sign of a resurgence to playing well again? I mean, he was 4th while losing strokes on the green last week, right? I don't know. He's got so much talent that I'm not sure if I could just throw him out because I don't see the course fit like it was last week.
I think this is the argument where I think you put him and Norgard Moller in the same lineup and just go, look, let's throw the expected course fit out the window and put these two guys in, put them with a, Willett, because he can definitely spike at any point, and put him in with those guys that don't necessarily get the clicks. Maybe put him in with Justin Sir. You can get really experimental with that lineup, I think. Put Sir, Moller, Nick Backham in, and you've got really talented golfers that people are not going to play because they're the anti-course fit. You've gone from everyone was talking about drivers of the golf ball last week, and you had to everyone's talking about short irons and wedge guys that don't necessarily drive that long, but you don't have to focus on that. Like it's not like a long driver can't succeed it. So I think it's definitely, we're going to see those ones where you go, well, I didn't play Backham because he drives it 350 yards. What a negative. Like it makes no sense really when you think about it.
For sure. Last guy, John Catlin. I think you made a very, very good argument of him, 7K flat. Definitely in on sprinkling him in the lineups. 6K.
I don't want to talk about him because we haven't really got time to go into him individually. Adrianos has fallen off a cliff, but he's got 6th and 9th place finishes here.
Man, it's so bad. The only thing that was promising was those last 6 holes of the PGA Championship,
which was when you were really excited about him. And I just wonder, does someone like that eventually have to come good? Maybe it's just not. Maybe it's too much. But he's interesting. Him and Paratore, in the 6-9s, are people that have got a bank of history and course form that you could probably lean on a bit if you like that thing.
Yeah, Paratore, 22nd last week at the Czech Masters isn't bad. Walking in, I mean, John Axelson had a really, really good stretch of golf, and I don't want to say that golf has, completely fallen off, because he did make the cut last week at the Czech Masters overall. He just hasn't really fired with irons, which I would like to see more. Maybe you see people click Affy Barnrat at 6,900. Somebody, I mean, like I said, I mentioned the 2 guys that I see quite a bit in down the board. It's just, you just have to, I mean, it's true risks in this end. Like Dale Whitnell won, right, the Scandinavian mix by a mile not that long ago, and then just absolutely nothing since. Like, you're hoping to find that type of spike. Do any of these guys catch your eye?
So I like JC Ritchie. I think that he is someone I mentioned yesterday. I think he hit his irons really well yesterday. So I like him at, 6'8". I mean, Ollie Wilson was playing good golf for a decent stretch.
I was waiting for that because he's the one. I think he could be on some radars. I didn't like that he missed it last week, but man,
But he's not
I
this like
think
he's always had a problem driving. Like, and I
yeah,
know he's tied it up, which is what's kind of allowed him. But he's still never been the longest hitter, and I think by his own admission, like he's chased that a little bit. But he's just consistent here. Like he's got 2 top fives. He's got a 23rd place finish, and even over the last 4 or 5 starts where he wouldn't have always been in good form, 58, 48, 21st, 44th, suggests that he's going to get you through a cut. 64 in the second round last year, 3 straight rounds of sub 70 the year before that. I think Wilson can offer a little bit of security at 6-7.
it's hard just to click, I guess, versus what we saw at Bessling last week, right? I mean, we mentioned Bessling potentially even being a selection and an outright 14th. I mean, he's also like that's the week you got to find him on a spike, right? He had been 0 top 25s, I guess top 20s since February. So I guess you just got to look at Bessling at those type of tracks. Rasso Kaima was the last one he did that, and that was another one which is big driver. I guess if I think I could take a shot on Backham, I do not want to, give up on Freddie Scott, who played exceptionally well last week. Just had a tough end to Saturday and didn't get going on Sunday, but a 14th and 12th in the last 2 PGA Tour or DP World Tour events. I guess last 3 DP World Tour events, he has 3 consecutive top 15 finishes, and you can get him at $6,700. He would be the one that I'm pretty intrigued at.
Yep. No, I like that. I think. Yeah, I don't know that much, but I know Shot's someone that you've talked about quite a lot. I don't know that much about him to really kind of pin, but like you said, what is it? It's not even just the 3 in the last 5. He's got another one going back to the Porsche European Open, the 14th as well. So he's got 4 in the last 9 events or whatever, top 15s. Like you're going to be hard pushed to find someone in that kind of form down here. I think you're going to see people just go to names they know like Cabrera Bello and things like that, and not necessarily offering you too much in terms of upside at this point in their careers. So yeah, I'm fine with that. And then
This point of careers, do you click on Miguel Angel Jimenez?
Yeah, I mean you can. Like he's the oldest ever DP World Tour winner, and he did it here. So he was 46. He missed the cut last year, but 73, 69 is not dreadful. 23rd and 27th before that. Is he even playing well enough? I mean, he had a second. What did he have? Where was that? The Champions Tour Boeing Classic. Like,
yeah,
he doesn't even come back now and play this, though, does he? Like, he used to kind of come back semi-regularly and play these events. But, I mean, look, he's going to be the person that cares the least on the golf course. And it depends how you want to frame that. Is that going to free him up and let him go and shoot 8 under and finish 25th for you? Or is he just not going to care and miss the cut and drink some wine?
He definitely could do it all.
He's definitely going to drink the wine. Like that's not a debate. Yeah, I think you go to your guys that you mentioned on the betting show last night. Like I think it's the Manu Gandas, it's the Pedro Figueiredo, particularly like Figueiredo. I think he's a good pick here.
And there's just not like much recent form when you look at it overall, right? That's like even if you wanted to find a pop, I think Scott for sure is the one of the bunch in that range. I mean, the one that like so the only reason this guy like showed up on my list was I wanted to see how good Todd Clements putted on Sunday. We haven't talked about Todd Clements the last 2 days. Unbelievable performance.
Yeah,
like world
and back to back 2 players that have not won that just go and put in unbelievable performances. Like it's great to see.
Yep, absolutely. No, big fan. Happy for him. But I looked to see who putted better on Sunday than Clements because he was second, and it was Ricardo Santos.
Yeah,
who has now come in.
It's just putting driven, right? His form, but he's the one that popped up on that Swiss Challenge. He's won it.
Yeah, so if you look at 31st, 11th, 23rd, for him here, what's his form? Made the cut last year. I think you could do worse at $6,300 than I guess him and Figueiredo, together there, 63s. I'm a little hurt. I'm a little hurt that I don't see any like amateurs that really fit the bill for me. You have You have. I got a tweet right away from our boy AD in regards to there's two Max Schleschling and Sturza this week. But just overall, not a much out of their AM careers. The best one is probably Gerhardsen. And even so, I mean, he was 33rd at the Amateur Championship recently. He won a couple AM events earlier in the year. He's 67th, I think, in the Wagger. So not a ton that I felt like compelled to be on. I mean, there's upside always in like a Christopher Bring type who had like a strong Barbasol recently. But it is tough clicks down here.
What about Levy?
Yeah,
I think we're the two people that talk about Alexander Levy more probably than his own family do at this stage of his career. But I just, what is it, 6-7 cuts in a row now that he's made? And when you look at his course form, it's very patchy, but he's got an 18th and a 32nd in his last 5 starts, 15th going into that final round when he was 32nd. So he was actually 9th at the halfway point when he finished 56th as well. So you've got 18th when he was 11th going into the final round, 56th when he was 9th at the halfway, and 32nd when he was 15th going into the final round. His missed cuts 71, 70, 74, 72. So he does have some kind of pretty grim missed cuts, but just that kind of form that he's got with, what is it? I mean, 6, 7 events in a row. The Czech Masters adding to it last week. I think he's someone that can get you through the cut because he was decently positioned. He was 30th going into the final round. Like if Levy finished 20th last week, I think he gets picked. And look, he was 2 shots off of doing that going into the final round.
Yep, totally agree. The other one, Jens Dantorp, came off a 3rd at the Barracuda and a 31st last week at the Czech Masters. So Dantorp could be somebody.
Made a cut here in the past.
John Perry popped a couple weeks prior, but I mean, it's tough. I guess Scrivener withdrew last week. He was somebody that like I was a little surprised. We just haven't seen him. He made both the PGA cuts last I guess month in July. So he had a really good start to his 2023. But man, it gets thin fairly down here. I would agree.
Gio Segrest is 6,500. He finished 62nd at the Bindemers International Open, 35th at Himmerland, where he's 11th going into the final round, and 27th at the ISPS Hander, where he was 9th going into the weekend. One appearance here, he finished 18th, and he was 2nd after round 1, the 63. So he's of interest. 2 Frenchmen there, him and Levy.
There we go. I'm just trying to see if I see. Look at current form, if there's anything on the smaller tours that we're really missing. I don't believe.
I don't think there is. I think normally these kind of things flash up to us before the betting show, right? Like I think we would have seen them. I mean, it's definitely been some conversations.
Dion Germaheis had a really good Friday, even though he missed a cut. He had like one of the best rounds in the field that week.
He's not even been playing well in South Africa though, which always concerns me when he goes back and doesn't do that.
Oh, here was one golfer we didn't mention that I thought 6,800. Max Schmidt, 2 good weeks back to back on the DP World Tour, 12th and a 4th after relatively nothing in the year. He had a good Challenge Tour year, but 6,800 for that form seemed pretty decent.
But look, he was another one that was 6th going into the final round of the BMW International Open, finished 18th. That was 8-10 weeks ago. 42nd at the British Challenge, as you mentioned there. 12th and 4th last 2 weeks. 39th and 59th. Can get you through a cut. That's what you're looking for down here. So, don't mind that one at all either. I think we've probably maxed out the guys that we have any confidence in, because otherwise you are just naming the names that are down here, and saying one thing on them. I think that we've covered anyone that I think can really offer anything of any note. I'm just going to look at Kjeldsen. Soren Kjeldsen hasn't even got a good course form here. I just thought like he's a name that's flashed up a few times as a veteran that could play well here, but he's not got the greatest course form, so out on him.
All right. Yeah, I think we can put a bow on it. What I would say is let's do what Tambo and Pat do on play the best plays if we make a lineup to close ourselves out here um, and fill in. So who would be your first click of play the best plays?
Fitz.
Yeah, I think it has to be Fitz for me too. So he would be the first one in. You liked
So,
Eduardo Molinari a lot.
yep, definitely.
So I think he could be a fair one. I'll be curious the type of it. I like Dumont de Chassart a ton.
So he's in. So we've got Fitz, Dumont de Chassart, Eduardo Maloro. These are 7.5 on average.
Yeah.
I think that do we put Kimsey in?
That would be probably the next selection for me too. And that gets us now 72.50. The only problem that we're setting ourselves up for is it's not like we feel incredibly confident in the sevens, right? Like if I'm thinking of like play, like I of course think highly of some of my guys, but I know it's speculative.
I like Eduardo Malorian's seam. I think that gives you some decent coverage in that 7K, and it leaves you 6,700 to take a shot, which gives you Wilson, Besseling, Shot, Levy.
Yeah, shot seems like a good selection there.
Shot. So you've got Fitz, Dumont de Chassart, Kimsey, Molinari, Shot, seam.
And if you didn't go with Fitz, if you went with say Jordan Smith or Rosner, you're now in that 8K range pretty much that you could be low eights, where you could easily be getting into Kinholt if you felt okay about Kinholt, or high sevens if you had to adjust there. So a lot of options, lot of room still in the contest. So I think there was high hopes by DraftKings, and I love seeing it. But even though it is Tuesday, there is time to still enter these contests. We could use the big support to fill it. Hopefully, have another big week for the Irish Open next week. But that puts a bow on everything I got. Tom, you got any more?
Just one more. If we start with Smith and Dumont de Chassart, put Paul in. You've got Hillier, Kinholt, and it leaves you 7-2.
Yeah.
So you can have Zanotti, Backham, Sharma. Yeah. So that's another way to play it. I think those are the two decent approaches that I like. Is either leave yourself one guy that you take a shot with Shot, or Wilson at 6,700 and take that kind of two-player approach at the top, or do that a little bit more balanced. But I don't think you necessarily need to get too caught up in the 8Ks. I think that's one thing that would be my closing statement this week.
Yep, I can agree with you there. But that puts a wrap on it for this week. A two-parter DFS preview along with the betting preview you can find on all the platforms for us on Mayo Media Network. But Tom, really appreciate all the time and effort you put in this week, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's nice to talk to you as always. It's nice to do it twice in a week. So a couple of longer shows for us, which is rare. So just shows what we think of this week, and hopefully we can all rally around, make it a big week, and look forward to some more of this going into the end of the DP World Tour season.
Yep, 100%. Awesome. Good luck, everybody. Somebody take down that 6-figure prize. There's plenty of good ones out there, so good luck. Hit us up. You can find me at Skyhook DFS or at Tom Jacobs 93 for us there. So please reach out. We'd love to answer any more questions. And good luck. Take it down.